Around 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began to leave Africa. They did not enter a safe world. They faced a frozen planet, gray skies, months of snow and ice, and a struggle for survival in conditions unlike anything seen before. For tens of thousands of years, humans endured the last ice age, a global cold cycle that only ended about 12,000 years ago. But in reality, it didn't truly end. Geologically, the ice retreated. Biologically, the ice age still lives within us, in our reflexes, unconscious behaviors, and even in the architecture of the modern human brain. Human behavior is not only learned, it was shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure. Many reflexes we now consider natural are actually survival mechanisms from a glacial world where even minor mistakes could mean death. Take, for example, shivering when cold. This is not just an emotional reaction, it's a purposeful physiological response. Quick muscle contractions generate heat to help maintain body temperature. This reflex once determined who would survive the night and who wouldn't. Or the sensation of hair standing on end when afraid. This reaction originally served to make our ancestors appear larger to predators. Among primates, it's often accompanied by a hunched posture and loud vocalizations, a visual and auditory display to deter threats. In modern humans, the effect remains, though it no longer serves a practical purpose. It is an inherited warning system. Another ancient reflex is clustering together when threatened. In the Ice Age, isolation meant extinction. Only tightly bonded groups, those who shared fire, food, alerts, and defense, had a chance against wolves, cold nights, and unpredictable weather. The urge to huddle near others when anxious, even among strangers, is a deep-rooted psychological instinct that still drives modern social behavior. Today, we live in locked homes, use electricity, and travel by modern means, but our brains still operate as if we are alone in a forest at night, being hunted. A small sound in the dark, wind through a crack, a snapping twig, is enough to elevate our heart rate, tense our muscles, and trigger a readiness to flee. This is the ancient fight-or-flight response governed by the amygdala. The brain is built to prioritize survival over accuracy. It's better to be wrong 100 times than to miss a real threat once. Similarly, fear of the dark is universal. It exists across all cultures, regardless of education or environment. Studies show that children around the world exhibit fear when placed in darkness, even without visible danger. The reason is simple. Darkness was once the hunting ground of predators. Even in sleep, a state that seems detached from danger, the human body remains alert. The phenomenon of unihemispheric sleep, where one half of the brain remains more active when sleeping in an unfamiliar place, is a trait that once helped our ancestors stand guard in shifts, avoiding surprise attacks. Studies of sleep in both primates and modern humans confirm that the brain never fully disconnects from its surroundings. Many believe that technology, urban life, and modern civilization have freed us from nature. But the truth is the opposite. Our bodies and brains still operate under Ice Age rules, thinly covered by the veneer of modernity. Every time you shiver in an air-conditioned room, jump at a sudden noise, feel uneasy walking alone, or feel safer in a crowd, that is not personal preference. It is a living imprint of a past that never died. You may live in the digital age, but your body, from reflexes to instincts, is a product of another era, an age of mammoths, endless snow, and humans who lived in caves, gathered around fire, hunted together, and hid from cave lions. The Ice Age is no longer out there, it is inside you. Section 2. Instincts never die. Modern humans like to think of themselves as rational, conscious beings. But much of our behavior is governed not by reason, but by reflexes, automatic patterns hardwired into our nervous systems long before written language, cities, or agriculture. These instincts did not evolve in the modern world. They are the survival systems of Ice Age humans, systems still operating beneath the surface every day. Let's begin with a simple question. Why are we afraid of the dark? This fear is nearly universal across cultures, age groups, and even species. Children raised without exposure to violence still fear the night. Why? The answer is not psychological, it's evolutionary. For millions of years, darkness meant danger. Humans were not top predators, we were prey. Most of the animals that hunted our ancestors, from big cats to giant snakes, were nocturnal. The inability to see well in low light put us at constant risk. Those who feared the dark, who became alert and cautious after sunset, were more likely to survive and reproduce. Over thousands of generations, the fear became instinct. The result, even today, in well-lit cities and secured homes, our brains still associate darkness with potential threat, and they respond accordingly. Why do children want stories before sleep? This behavior is so common, it's almost invisible, but it holds a deeper origin. In prehistoric communities, storytelling wasn't entertainment, it was information transfer. Before writing, speech was the only method to pass down survival knowledge. Which plants to eat, where predators roam, how to make tools, how to treat wounds. These stories were often told at night, around fires, once the day's work was done. Children listening before bed were not being soothed, they were being educated. What seems like ritual was, in fact, a critical survival mechanism. Even today, research shows that narrative memory, our ability to retain knowledge embedded in stories, is more efficient than factual recall alone. The neural pathways involved in storytelling are deeply ingrained in the human brain, and they form the basis of how we interpret reality, teach values, and construct social norms. Why does social isolation trigger panic? Human beings evolved in groups. For most of our evolutionary history, being isolated from the group meant death. No protection, no fire, no shared food, no collective defense. As a result, the brain treats isolation as a biological emergency. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Loneliness activates the same areas of the brain as physical pain. Chronic social disconnection leads to elevated cortisol levels, disrupted sleep, and increased risk of illness. From an evolutionary standpoint, it's clear the body is reacting to social absence as it would to starvation or injury. These aren't feelings, they're survival signals embedded in neurochemistry. The brain is still wired for the Pleistocene. Studies using functional MRI scans have shown that the human brain reacts disproportionately to certain visual stimuli, especially snakes, spiders, and predatory eyes in the dark. In experiments, participants shown images of snakes, even stylized or cartoon versions, display faster reaction times and increased amygdala activation compared to neutral images. This reaction occurs even in individuals who have never encountered a snake in their lives. The amygdala, hippocampus, and other regions tied to threat detection remain tuned to stimuli that were dangerous to our ancestors, regardless of their relevance today. Even sounds like the sudden snap of a twig or rustle in leaves can trigger heightened attention and physiological arousal. These auditory cues once signaled an approaching predator. The human nervous system learned to respond instantly without analysis. Today, these same cues can induce anxiety, startle responses, or unexplained dread. The threat is no longer real, but the reflex remains. Instincts are not optional. They are active systems. Instincts are not philosophical artifacts from the past. They are functional programs that still govern behavior, decision-making, and perception. The illusion of rationality masks a deeper layer of automatic processing, optimized not for comfort, but for survival in a hostile environment. When you freeze at a sudden noise, feel uneasy when walking alone at night, relax near a fire, seek comfort in company after stress, you are not making conscious decisions. You are responding to ancestral codes designed to keep you alive in conditions that no longer exist. Even modern emotional disorders may be mismatches between these ancient systems and the environment we've built. Anxiety, for example, can be seen as an overactivation of threat detection systems in a world where actual threats are rare, but our brains still scan for them constantly. Instincts are ancient, but they are not obsolete. They never stopped operating. The Ice Age ended geologically, but biologically, it is still active. In our reflexes, in our stress responses, and in our core needs for warmth, connection, and safety. We did not reset when we built cities. We adapted, but adaptation is slow. Our fears, comforts, habits, and even our social behaviors are not fully modern. They are shaped by 200,000 years of survival in forests, grasslands, and caves. We do not just remember the past, we are the past, moving forward on a nervous system still calibrated for shadows, predators, and firelight. Instincts never die. They only hide in plain sight. Section 3. Dreams of fire. Fire was not just a discovery, it was a turning point in human evolution. Long before agriculture, tools, or permanent shelters, fire defined what it meant to be human. From the earliest campfires in stone shelters to the candles on modern birthday cakes, fire has remained a central symbol, associated with warmth, protection, and meaning. Its power was never purely physical. Fire shaped how we think, how we bond, how we build societies. And its psychological legacy is still deeply embedded in the human brain. Fire is a universal human anchor. In every ancient culture, fire sits at the center, physically and symbolically. In Paleolithic caves, soot stains mark fire pits surrounded by sleeping areas. In tribal societies, fire is where families eat, elders speak, and decisions are made. In religious texts and rituals across continents, fire is sacred, purifying, illuminating, eternal. This pattern is not random. It's rooted in survival. Fire was the first tool that let humans control time. Before fire, day ended at sunset. After fire, night became negotiable. The ability to extend wakefulness, to gather and communicate after dark, restructured how humans lived and how they evolved. Fire changed the human brain. The invention of fire didn't just change how we cooked food or avoided predators. It changed our biology and neuroscience. Modern studies show that watching fire has direct physiological effects. Reduces blood pressure, slows heart rate, lowers stress hormones, triggers oxytocin release, the same hormone involved in social bonding and trust. In controlled experiments, people who watched videos of fire for extended periods experienced measurable calmness and increased prosocial behavior, even without sound or heat. This is not coincidental. The human brain has been conditioned over thousands of generations to associate firelight with safety. Where there is fire, there is a group, there is warmth, there is shared food, there is vigilance. Firelight meant survival. That association is still active. Nightfall was the birthplace of culture. Once fire extended the night, something unprecedented occurred. Humans started talking, not just reacting. The night fire became a cognitive accelerator. Around its glow, people didn't just share food. They shared memories, instructed children, debated decisions, and told stories. These weren't casual conversations. They were essential data transfer. How to identify edible plants, where predators had been spotted, what strategies worked in last week's hunt, what rules held the group together. This social information formed the foundation of culture, the rules, knowledge, and values that passed down across generations. In evolutionary terms, fire enabled something no species had achieved before: cumulative learning. Fire was the original social network. Before the internet, before books, before writing, even before symbolic art, fire was the medium through which ideas spread. You could not survive long alone, but at the fire, You became part of a shared intelligence. This explains why modern technologies designed for connection, television, phones, social media, still mirror the structure of a fire circle. People gather in the same place, even if virtually. They share stories, opinions, memories. Attention is focused toward a shared visual center. Our need to gather around something is not cultural, it's biological. It reflects the deeply ingrained pattern of fire-centered communication. We don't just like watching screens at night because it's convenient. We do it because it echoes an ancient blueprint. Fire is still in our dreams. Across cultures, fire appears in myths, dreams, and symbols. It's a consistent element in human imagination. Across millennia and geography, people dream of warmth, light, and flickering shadows, especially during illness or stress. Fire in dreams often represents life force, memory, or transformation. In some indigenous traditions, dreaming of fire is believed to connect one to ancestors. Carl Jung once described fire as part of the collective unconscious, a symbol carried across generations, coded into human imagination. Whether or not this theory holds, modern neuroscience supports the idea of shared imagery in human dreams, tied to common evolutionary experiences. Fire is one of them. We don't sit around fire pits in caves anymore, but the systems built around those fire pits still govern how we behave. We gather at restaurants, not just to eat, but to reconnect. We light candles during ceremonies, not because we need light, but because we seek meaning. We relax in front of televisions at night, not realizing that our brains still interpret the flicker as firelight, comforting, familiar, safe. We have built cities and satellites, but the part of us that once huddled together in the cold, staring into the flames, has not disappeared. It has adapted, but it remains. The fire lives on, not just in hearths and rituals, but in our nervous system, our social instincts, and our dreams. We are still the species that lit the dark, and somewhere deep inside, we still dream of fire. Section 4. Genes that remember. Our DNA is not a blank template. It is a historical document, written in biological code, revised over thousands of generations. Every human alive today carries within their genome the molecular evidence of what our ancestors faced, feared, survived, and adapted to. We often think of evolution as something that happened in the distant past. But genetic research shows otherwise. The past is still active, encoded in the mechanisms of our metabolism, our immunity, and even our psychology. We carry the genes of other humans. The human species is not genetically pure. Modern Homo sapiens is a mosaic of ancient lineages. Genetic sequencing has revealed that people of European and Asian descent carry between 1 to 4% of their genome from Neanderthals. In some populations in Southeast Asia and Oceania, a small but significant percentage of DNA also comes from the Denisovans, another archaic human group. These weren't random traces. They reflect real interbreeding events between early Homo sapiens and other hominins as we expanded out of Africa and encountered new environments and new people. In most cases, these ancient gene variants survived because they offered adaptive advantages. Ancient genes still affect how we function. Many of the Neanderthal and Denisovan gene variants that persist in modern populations influence systems that were critical for survival in prehistoric conditions. For example, the EPAS1 gene found in Tibetan populations was inherited from Denisovans. It allows individuals to thrive at high altitudes by regulating the body's use of oxygen more efficiently, critical in environments with thin air. Other genes affect skin pigmentation, hair structure, and sweat gland density, responses to cold climates, sun exposure, and disease resistance. Variants that influence the immune system, especially the body's inflammatory responses, are directly linked to genes inherited from Neanderthals. These helped ancient humans fight off unfamiliar pathogens in new territories. But not all of these ancient traits are beneficial in modern environments. Evolutionary trade-offs in modern disease. Some genes that once ensured survival have now become liabilities. For instance, genes that encourage rapid insulin release were adaptive in a feast or famine context. They helped our ancestors store energy quickly during rare moments of abundance. Today, in an environment of constant food availability, those same genes increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, obesity, and metabolic syndrome. This is called an evolutionary mismatch, where genes optimized for one environment become maladaptive in another. It explains why some of today's most common health issues are not failures of biology, but remnants of ancient survival strategies. In other words, what helped us live then hurts us now. Epigenetics, memory beyond DNA sequence. The inheritance of the past isn't limited to DNA sequences. There is another layer, epigenetics, the study of how gene expression is regulated without altering the genetic code itself. Environmental factors such as diet, trauma, infection, or stress can cause chemical modifications to DNA and associated proteins. These modifications don't change the code, but they determine how and when genes are activated. Critically, some of these changes can be passed down to future generations. This means that our ancestors' experiences, starvation, danger, war, migration, may influence how our own genes behave today. And that influence may extend to our mental health, stress responses, learning capacity, and even emotional sensitivity. Examples: children of Holocaust survivors have shown altered stress hormone regulation, even when raised in different environments. Descendants of populations exposed to famine during early childhood exhibit higher rates of obesity and cardiovascular disease, suggesting transgenerational effects. Epigenetics offers a new understanding. We inherit not just the genes, but also the way they're tuned by ancestral life events. Our cells carry evolutionary decisions. Every cell in your body contains not just a copy of your DNA, but also millions of years of evolutionary logic about how to survive in specific environments. These aren't vague metaphors. They're real biological adaptations accumulated over generations of struggle. When your immune system overreacts to harmless substances, it's a leftover from an immune network evolved to detect and fight parasites. When you overeat in times of stress, it's the activation of systems designed to prepare your body for famine. When you struggle to sleep in new environments, that's not insomnia. It's vigilance, a holdover from nights when unfamiliar meant unsafe. Your biology does not recognize skyscrapers, supermarkets, or air conditioning. It is still operating in Ice Age mode, reacting to triggers based on assumptions that predate civilization by hundreds of thousands of years. You didn't just inherit your ancestors' body shape, skin tone, or facial features. You inherited their solutions, their strategies for survival, encoded at the cellular level. Some of those strategies remain useful, others are outdated, but all of them are still active. You are not a blank slate. You are the sum of every challenge your lineage has ever faced. Your genes carry fragments of extinct human species. Your immune system was forged in battles you never fought. Your stress responses echo traumas you never experienced. Your cellular chemistry reflects landscapes you've never seen. You are not just the future of your species. You are its memory, written in blood, shaped by fire, refined by hunger, and passed forward cell by cell. Genes don't forget, they adapt, and they remember everything. Section 5. A map written in blood. You live in a modern world. You work in climate-controlled offices. You navigate traffic with GPS. You speak to machines, scroll through digital feeds, and rely on artificial intelligence to optimize daily life. But despite all this, you still feel safer in groups. You instinctively turn toward the sound of a snapping twig. You relax when seated near warmth and light. You find comfort in shared meals, bedtime stories, and familiar routines. These are not cultural preferences. They are biological instructions. Human behavior is a survival blueprint. Every time you feel anxiety walking alone at night, every time you freeze at a sudden sound, every time you crave human connection after stress, you are not malfunctioning. You are following a map, one etched over hundreds of thousands of years, shaped by natural selection, encoded into your central nervous system, and carried forward in blood. Evolution doesn't just design your organs, it scripts your behavior. It tells you to seek shelter, to avoid isolation, to respond quickly to threat, to bond tightly with those who protect you, to conserve energy when resources are low. This behavioral map wasn't created in classrooms or cities. It was drawn in forests, on savannas, in caves, and under ice. Emotion is not opposed to logic. It is survival. Many people see emotion as the opposite of rationality. In evolutionary terms, this is incorrect. What we call emotion is often a shortcut to survival, a rapid way to trigger action without requiring conscious analysis. Fear, disgust, trust, attraction. These are not random feelings. They are evolved signals calibrated over millennia to guide decisions that increase the chances of survival and reproduction. You recoil from the smell of rot because it once meant death. You are drawn to infant faces because nurturing behavior ensured species survival. You feel a drop in your chest when separated from your group because isolation once meant predation. None of these responses are learned. They are inherited. Evolution is still operating, quietly. Many believe evolution stopped once civilization began. This is false. Biologically, we are still evolving. But more importantly, we are still carrying adaptations from the past that continue to affect how we think, feel, and behave. You don't need to be in a cave for your brain to act like you are. When your heart races during public speaking, your body is responding to what it interprets as exposure, a form of vulnerability that once attracted predators. When you form tight-knit social groups, you are recreating tribal bonding patterns, where loyalty meant life and betrayal meant exile. Modern life is new. The instincts behind it are ancient. The past is not behind us. It's inside us. DNA is not just a string of chemicals. It is an archive, recording the survival strategies of every ancestor who managed to pass on life. But genes are only one part of that inheritance. Behavior, reflexes, instincts, preferences, these too are inherited. Not consciously, not intellectually, but neurologically. When you sit by a campfire and feel calm, that is not nostalgia. That is your nervous system responding to a pattern of safety established 300,000 years ago. When you gather with others to eat and share stories, you are not being sentimental. You are fulfilling the oldest behavioral contract of the species, that survival is collective and knowledge must be passed down.